Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling the performance review. You know that meeting, the one that feels like a report card and a coaching session all rolled into one. The big question is, can it actually be both? Let's get into it. All right, let's just jump right in with the question. A question I'm pretty sure every single one of us has asked at some point. It doesn't matter if you're an intern or CEO. That little voice in your head asking, am I doing this right? That's really the whole reason performance reviews even exist, right? To really get why this is so tricky, let's imagine something. Picture this. You're a manager, and you have this employee. Let's call them Alex. Alex is a rock star coder, just brilliant. Their work? Flawless. But Alex's communication style is, well, it's toxic, and it's poisoning the whole team's morale. Your review with Alex is tomorrow. So what do you do? And that dilemma right there, that's the core of what we're talking about today. It's what's known as the performance paradox. Because as a manager in that situation, you're being asked to play two totally opposite roles in the very same meeting. Okay, so think about it. Role number one, you're the judge. You have to create a paper trail, right? You've got to document Alex's issues to explain why their bonus is lower, and let's be honest, to manage the company's risk if you have to let them go down the line. But then you have to switch hats instantly and become the coach. Your job is to build trust, to inspire Alex to get better, to help them grow. But here's the kicker, and neuroscience actually backs this up. The second our brain feels judged, it goes into defense mode. The parts of the brain that are open to learning and growth, they just shut down. So that whole coaching conversation you planned, it becomes pretty much impossible. And you know what? This is not some new 21st century problem. We're talking decades ago. The absolute legend of management, W. Edwards Deming, he called performance reviews public enemy number one. His argument was wild but powerful. He said that 94% of the time, performance problems aren't the person's fault. They're the system's fault. So when we rate people, we're basically just blaming them for things that are out of their control. So why is this paradox so darn hard to fix? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we have to look at what actually makes us tick, what motivates us at work. And it really comes down to two big competing ideas, what some people call the carrot versus the calling. Okay, first up is the old school way of thinking, expectancy theory. The basic idea here is that we're all just rational actors, you know? We're doing a mental calculation. If I work hard, I'll perform well. And if I perform well, I'll get a reward, like a bigger paycheck or that promotion I've been eyeing. The performance review, in this world, is basically the moment of truth where that calculation pays off or doesn't. But then there's a more modern take, and it's called self-determination theory. This one says, hold on, it's not all about the external rewards. Our deepest motivation actually comes from inside. It's fueled by three basic human needs. First, autonomy, that feeling that we're in the driver's seat of our own work. Second, competence, that desire to master our craft, to actually get good at what we do. And third, relatedness. The need to feel like we're part of a team, connected to the people around us. And you can see how rigid top-down ratings can just completely stomp on those feelings. So here's the bottom line. You've got expectancy theory, which is all about the judge role, accountability, rewards, the external carrot. And then you have self-determination theory, which is all about the coach role, growth, development, that internal calling. When you try to jam both of those into a single one-hour meeting, well, you get what some people call a split brain problem. You end up doing a bad job at both. Okay, so if the old way is broken, what are we supposed to do? What's the fix? Well, let's look at a couple of real-world examples. We're going to see how two huge companies completely reinvented their review process. And what's really interesting is they took totally different approaches to fix the exact same problem. First, let's talk about Adobe. Back in 2011, they were using a stack ranking system, and it was a total nightmare. Get this, it was eating up 80,000 manager hours every single year. And worse, it was pushing their best people out the door. So in 2012, they did something pretty radical. They just got rid of annual reviews completely. They replaced the whole thing with something called the check-in, which is basically just a series of ongoing, informal chats about goals and feedback. And the result? It was incredible. Their voluntary turnover, that's the number of people who willingly quit, it dropped by 30%. I mean, that's a huge number. Just by splitting up the judge and the coach, they created a culture with way more trust and freedom. Okay, but a full-blown revolution like Adobe's isn't for everyone. So let's look at another path, evolution. This is what the banking giant RBC did with their performance enablement model.
They didn't scrap everything. Instead, they shifted from an annual review to quarterly chats. They invested a ton in retraining their managers to think more like coaches. And this is a really clever part. They kept a formal system for deciding pay, but they made sure those compensation talks were totally separate from the conversations about growth and development.
So what does this tell us? It shows that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, right? Adobe has a super creative workforce, so they needed to maximize autonomy. Revolution was the way to go. RBC, on the other hand, is a bank. They need structure and accountability. So for them, evolution made more sense. At the end of the day, both of them figured out the most important thing. It's not about the paperwork. It's about the relationship between a manager and their employee. All right, so this is all great theory, but how do we actually use this? Let's bring it all back home and talk about what this means for you in your next review and what it might tell us about where the world of work is heading. Look, you can't always wait for your company to fix things, but you can take control of the process yourself. Here are 4 practical things you can start doing tomorrow to nail your next appraisal. Number 1, on day 1 of any project, ask, what does success look like? Get super clear on expectations. Number 2, keep your own highlight reel. Track your achievements with real numbers and examples. Number 3, don't wait a whole year for feedback. Ask for it every month. And finally, number 4, always tie what you're doing back to the bigger picture. Show how your work helps the company win.
And here's a really simple but powerful tool for actually doing something with that feedback you get. It's called the Keep, Stop, Start model. After you have a chat with your manager, just ask yourself 3 questions. Based on our talk, what's one thing I should keep doing because it's really working? What's one thing I should probably stop doing? And what's one new thing I should start doing? It just makes it super simple and turns a conversation into a concrete plan. Okay, let's boil this all down to the 3 big takeaways. First, feedback has a half-life. The more time that passes, the less useful it is. Real time is always better. Second, you've got to separate the judge from the coach. You just can't be open to learning if you're worried about your bonus. It doesn't work. And third, context is everything. What works for a design agency is going to be a disaster at a nuclear power plant, and that's okay. And that leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending thought to chew on. The annual review as we know it, it's on its way out. It's dying. But what's coming next? We're already seeing AI tools that give us instant feedback, that nudge us daily on how we're doing. So the big question for the future is this: how do we hold on to our very human needs for autonomy, for real connection, when our next boss, our next performance coach, might not be a person at all, but an algorithm?